When she was 18 years old, Beatrice Santello was on top of the world. She was the valedictorian of her graduating class at Possum Springs High School and was accepted into numerous colleges. No small feat for a girl with a blue-collar background from a tiny town in the Rust Belt. But before she could depart for the school of her choice, Bea's life unraveled. Her mother was diagnosed with cancer and passed away shortly thereafter. Heartbroken, her father fell into a deep depression. Unable to keep up with his wife's medical bills, he sold their family home and moved both him and Bea into a small apartment. Soon, he'd struggle to continue running his store, the Old Pickaxe, and pass off his managerial duties to his daughter. Almost overnight, Bea went from the precipice of her dreams to an existential nightmare from which there seemed to be no way for her to escape. And it's in the midst of that existential nightmare that we find her in the early hours of night in the woods, when her old friend Mae fails to remember everything she's been through the last 2 years. Compared to Mae's family, the Borowskis, who've lived in Possum Springs for generations, it appears that Bea's family, the Santellos, might not have lived in the area for all that long. If you make chicken and biscuits during the dinner at Bea's hangout when Mae is leaving, you can find Mr. Santello talking in his sleep, saying that our protagonist's fantastic meal reminded him of his own mother's chicken and biscuits recipe. Chicken and biscuits is a signature dish in the southeastern United States. It's a big deal in Virginia, the Carolinas, and even parts of Georgia. Huge credit to Dark Ninja Firefox for pointing this out in my video on Bea's father from way back in August of 2023. While it isn't slam dunk proof that the Santellos migrated to the region, it is supported by what we know about the ownership history of the Old Pickaxe. According to a newspaper article you can read in the library, the store was originally owned by a man named Roy Burge. The article doesn't have a date, so it's unclear how old it is. But this certainly suggests that the Old Pickaxe didn't become the Santello family business until fairly recently. Piecing this information together, I propose the following theory. Mr. Santello moved to Possum Springs when he was young, apprenticed as a handyman under Roy Burge, and married his daughter, Bea's mother. When Roy Burge was ready to retire, he, naturally, passed the ownership of the store over to his now son-in-law and star pupil. It's all speculation, of course, but I like this theory because it adds depth to the story of Bea, her family, and their economic hardships. Mr. Santello moved to Possum Springs during the town's heyday, found a livelihood and love in the small town, and managed to outlast the departure of the mines and factories. He, like Bea in her senior year, probably felt like he was on top of the world, the luckiest man on the planet. But when his wife died, all of that changed in an instant. Furthermore, it might even explain his reluctance to return to work at the Old Pickaxe. If he met his wife while he was working there under her father's tutelage, then no doubt there were reminders of her presence all over the store. It's tragic to think about, but it's easy for the writer in me to imagine Mr. Santello, still dressed in black from the funeral, standing at the cash register, hearing the door swing open, and flashing back to the day he first laid eyes on the woman who would change his life forever. Again, that's just speculation. As the years pass by without any more Night in the Woods content, I think it's important for us to craft small narratives like this wherever we can. It's up to us to keep this game alive. You, me, and all the other great creators in this community. As far as we can tell, it seems that the Pickaxe managed to stay afloat despite the economic downturn. Though they no doubt lost business, hardware stores are a foundational piece of any community. People always need hammers, nails, and someone to help them make repairs. Not long after the situation in Possum Springs took a turn for the worst, Mr. Santello and his wife would welcome their first and only daughter, Bea. It was in her elementary school days that she'd first befriend Mae, whom she met when they were both Girl Scouts. They affectionately dubbed each other Mayday and BB, and got into all sorts of youthful antics together. This included catching and caring for a turtle they named Boxy, who, unfortunately, didn't live very long. A sad but common experience for many children who try to adopt an animal that needs a significant and complicated amount of care. But before long, the friendship between these two girls would meet a similar fate. By the time middle school rolled around, the dynamic duo had grown apart. According to Bea, Mae stopped responding to her phone calls and started spending most of her time with Greg instead. It's tempting to speculate about a deeper reason for their schism, but I truly think it boils down to nothing more than human nature. I'm a middle school teacher, and I can't even begin to tell you how often I see students enter 6th grade with one group of friends and leave in 8th grade with another. It's just how things go when people are in their early teenage years. Your body changes, your interests change, your priorities change, and all of that ultimately leads to changing who you're friends with. Night in the Woods is very much a slice-of-life game that aims to tell honest, realistic stories about its characters, and I'm inclined to think that that's what the developers were going for here with the backstory on how Mae and Bea went their separate ways. Despite distancing herself from Mae, B's own star would continue to rise. As mentioned, she was very successful in school, pulling off grades that would place her at the very top of her class. It appears that it was during this time that B made two new friends to fill the void Mae left behind. The first was Jackie, the lone trans character we meet in the game, and potentially the only trans character in all Possum Springs. Jackie and B would bond over their shared political beliefs. They're both democratic socialists, rather passionate about it, though Jackie is certainly more outspoken about her views. Though it's hard to say precisely when B and Jackie met, I'd wager that it was shortly after her and Mae parted ways. Jackie's disdain for Mae is particularly aggressive, and though this could be the result of interactions she had with our protagonist personally, such as classes they had together or things of that nature, it's always seemed, to me anyway, that Jackie's feelings about Mae go back to her desire to protect and defend B. Thus, I think it's likely that B befriended Jackie not long after Mae stopped talking to her, and that the hurt feelings she had about this were a major topic of discussion between B and Jackie as their own bond blossomed. The second key friend B met around this time was Angus. Much like with Jackie, we don't know how they first crossed paths, but I wouldn't be surprised if it also had something to do with their political views. Angus himself shares some of B's outlook on the world, and many high schools and middle schools, even in conservative areas like Possum Springs, do have clubs that allow students to express such opinions. So it could be that they met at a young activist club or something of that nature. Regardless, it would be through this friendship with Angus that B would later find her way into the party barn garage band, where she'd use her computer to play Mae's bass parts while she was away at college, and Casey's drum parts after his sudden disappearance. Unlike Greg, Angus, and Mae, we know little about B's romantic history. However, Scott Benson has confirmed that she is straight. B herself alludes to this during the Graveyard segment with the Three Weird Teens, where she shares the story of how she lost her virginity at math camp, of all places. According to B, it was a disappointing experience, but the math was good. Though high school was largely a positive experience for B, everything would change for her towards the end of it, as her mother passed away after a battle with cancer. We don't know when B's mother first got sick, but when you consider just how successful B was in school and how tragically things fell apart for her after her mother's passing, the timeline here seems to suggest that it all happened rather suddenly. For B to have been her high school valedictorian implies that her grades were top-notch in the spring semester of her senior year, and college entrance exams like the SATs and the ACTs aren't usually taken until spring semester junior year. Thus, it appears that for much of her senior year, she was living under the impression that she was indeed going to go to college. If her mother was already sick at the time, I don't think that would have been the case. I think her expectations would have been more measured by then, that she'd have already known that college wasn't going to be in the cards for her. To me, this timeline adds to the tragedy of B's story. Here we have a girl who thought she had nothing but green grass and high tides in front of her, probably dreamed of leaving Possum Springs for university in another state, or an entirely different part of the country. In all likelihood, considering her grades, she might have even received some scholarships or a free ride to some of the schools she applied to. But even if she had the benefit of such luxuries, there are always hidden costs to going away to college: textbooks, room and board, and other amenities. But due to the financial burden of her mother's medical bills and funeral costs, combined with her father's mental breakdown and depression, she was forced to abandon her dreams and stay at home to support what remained of her family. You can see the impact of all of this in the aforementioned dinner at B's hangout. The apartment B and her father moved into is small compared to the family home they had no choice but to sell. The overwhelming sadness felt by both B and her father is evidenced by the latter's confinement to the couch and the unpacked boxes in the former's room, lingering like unwelcome ghosts. And it's important to remember that it's from this profound nexus of tragedy that Mae re-enters B's life. If it weren't for the fact that B's friendship with Angus had grown during Mae's absence, and her joining the party barn garage band with her computer, they might not have ever crossed paths again. But cross paths they do, and right away, Mae serves as a reminder of all the things that were taken away from B. Unlike B, Mae's own personal tragedy, the killer incident, didn't rob her of the opportunity to go to college. Unlike B, Mae still has two alive and functioning parents, who ultimately do support her despite her status as an unemployed dropout. Unlike B, Mae's family is still in possession of her childhood home, despite their economic difficulties. As off-putting as B's in-car outburst is on the way back from the party, when you look at it in context, it's no surprise that she reacts like this. Up until this point in the game, Mae has been rather flippant and dismissive about her situation. Though we, the player, know that our protagonist is just masking the truth and playing it off like she was too cool for school, for someone like B, who would have done anything to go to college, she sounds juvenile and ungrateful. All told, you could make the argument that B affords a fair amount of grace here in this conversation. She never again chastises Mae for forgetting her mother's passing, and still manages to help her get to bed, when she could have just left her in the care of her parents. If Mae spends the majority of her time with Bea, then it'll provide these two friends with an opportunity to rekindle their bond. They'll visit Fort Lucine Mall, a place they went to often in their youth. Mae will join Bea on the job when she repairs Miss Miranda's furnace, and then confront the disparity that separates their familial situations when she goes over to her house for dinner. And finally, she'll join Bea at a college party, where she'll see firsthand how difficult it is for Bea to enjoy anything approximating her former hopes and dreams. Along the way, Mae will inject some much-needed fun and spontaneity into Bea's life, while Bea encourages Mae to become more mature and responsible through her own example. When the situation with the cult comes to a head, she'll valiantly stand up for her, cutting a pro-wrestling-style promo on the wounded-eyed and challenging the beliefs of the murderous uncles down the mines with her own political philosophy. Weeks removed from the incident in her car after the party, she now views Mae as the closest thing she has to a sister, and helps protect her when Ide tries to drag her down with him outside the elevator. In the epilogue, Bea remains committed to supporting her family and continuing to run the old pickaxe, but Mae has encouraged her to take a vacation, to travel somewhere south, where they can get barbecue. Despite her obligations, Bea sounds interested in this idea. And perhaps, if Bea can take a vacation and step away from the many things that have been dragging her down, family tragedies, or economic difficulties, then maybe someday she'll find a way to live out her dreams by going to college after all. Thanks for watching. Huge thanks to my Night in the Woods collaborators Wolf.Godwin, Allan Naslund, and Jordi Jaen Moreno. To check out all three of these amazing artists, just follow the links down below in the description box. Special shout out to your Majesty for providing the fan art for this month's closing section. If you'd like to submit fan art for next month's Night in the Woods video, or any of my videos for that matter, then head over to our community Discord server and post it in the fan art submissions channel. Big shout out to all my silver and gold tier YouTube channel members and Patreon subscribers, including James Pruitt, Lil Caesar, Reed, Thonian, Anna Novikova, Sean Bobby, Green, and Draco Woloski, who get early access to these videos thanks to donations of $5 to $10 a month. See you next time, and go birds!